So the psychologists tell us that when we suffer a severe loss, we go through 7 stages of grief. They're quite well known. And today I want to look at those 7 stages of grief, and I want to apply it to the ANC following their loss in the general election of 2024. And let's see where they are if we look at that particular measure. What are the 7 stages of grief? Stage number 1, the loss happens. Shock and denial. Disbelief when you learn about this loss. Second stage, pain and guilt. It hurts. It hurts so much. You feel guilty for this loss because you couldn't prevent it. Stage number 2. Anger and bargaining. This is where you get really angry that this loss has happened. You're angry that it happens. You bargain. You say, if only I had have done this, or if only we had have done that, this wouldn't have happened. You're almost trying to undo the incident. Right? You try and negotiate your way out of the situation. Number 4, depression. The loss has happened. You have suffered the loss. You feel terrible about it. You don't even want to get out of bed in the morning. You've got this terrible loss, and depression can be the worst part of the loss. After depression, after eventually you say to yourself, snap out of it, deal with the loss, there's a bit of an upward turn. And you start saying, well, look, life carries on. I must deal with this loss. Start moving in an upward trajectory. That's stage number 5. Stage number 6 is you start reconstructing and working your way through the loss. This is where you adapt to the loss. You say, okay, I've suffered this loss. It's no longer in my life. How am I going to build up my life to deal without this particular thing that's been lost? And then the last stage is acceptance and hope. This is when you say, I accept the loss and hope that this makes things, that some good comes of the loss. Out of every bad situation, something good comes out of it. So let's have a look, because the ANC suffered a severe loss in the 2024 election. And that was, they went from being the almighty liberation movement with a massive majority at every election, well over 50%, suddenly below 40%. Let's apply the stages to the ANC. Shock and denial. Well, that was apparent almost immediately. What did they do? They were shocked, couldn't believe it. President Ramaphosa was shocked about everything. But the point is, they were shocked. They really expected to win the election. And then they do, the electorate's spoken, and immediately moved into denial phase. And what was their form of denial with this loss? To say, well, we lost, but we're still the biggest. Right? And that's what they did. They said, we're going to deny that we lost. So we have to now go into a coalition, which they negotiate, but because they're in denial of the loss, they absolutely backstab their coalition partners by doing the dead opposite to what they said they would do. After they secure themselves the presidency, the vice presidency, and the speakership in Parliament, as well as the leadership in Gauteng and a few other positions. That was the initial response. The pain and guilt. The pain and guilt was apparent almost from the beginning. And it came from a lot of the ANC veterans that were so pained that the party had lost, and so pained, they felt so guilty that they were forced into a coalition, especially with the Democratic Alliance and parties like the Freedom Front Plus, etc. They couldn't believe it. They felt so guilty. They went on media. We even had people like Matthew Sposa on State of the Nation, the head of COSATU, the head of the Communist Party, saying this is too much pain for us to bear, that we now have to be in a coalition, especially with a party that we don't like. It was pain and guilt, stage 2. Stage 3, anger. Anger and bargaining. The anger was there almost from the start. We saw a lot of anger, as if to say, we'll show them that we didn't really lose. What did they do? They took all of those bills and turned them into laws. Things like Expropriation Without Compensation, Basic Education Amendment Act. Right? Basically, it was saying, we are so angry, we're going to show them that we're still in charge. And they passed these laws, even though they knew this was going to be a problem with their coalition that they just entered into. But they were angry, and they were triumphant when they passed these laws. Then we get into the next stage, which is depression. And depression was on show, very, very visibly, when Budget 1.0 turned out to be a massive failure. Without consulting any of their partners, as if it was still their old days where they were still in charge, as if the loss had never happened, the Minister of Finance decides to increase VAT by 2 percentage points without speaking to anybody. And suddenly he realized that he couldn't deliver his speech because he was told by his partners that they wouldn't vote for it, so they wouldn't have a majority. And the depression was visible. Enoch Godongwana just was incapable of hiding just how upset he was that not being able to get his way. That was the low point for their depression. It was the embodiment of depression, if you watched that. The upturn is busy happening now. The upturn, and I'm reluctant to call it an upturn, but we're going to stick with the phrase, and that is where you start realizing, oh dear, there's nothing we can do. We've lost our majority. We've tried to deny that we've lost this. We've got angry about it. We've got depressed, but now we need to do something about it. And sticking with the budget, which obviously became quite an important issue, what could they do? Well, they had to fire a minister. Nobushle Nkabani, who was the Minister of Higher Education, and everybody from the DA, as well as parties outside of the Government of National Unity, has said, we are not going to sign, we are not going to vote for the budget, the appropriations bill. We won't vote for it because you don't have the numbers. It's not going to pass unless you get rid of your corrupt ministers. There were two that were in question, one being Minister Nkabani, the other being Minister Simelane. And reluctantly, because the ANC never does this willingly, they fired Minister Nkabani. This is the upward turn, the turn where you got to say, okay, life goes on. Stage 6, which demands reconstruction and working through grief, may just come through this Madlanga Commission, following the revelations by Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi about criminal activities that stretch all the way into Parliament, all the way into the highest levels of the country. This is a job of saying, we are going to hand this hot potato to an external body, and we are going to see exactly how deep this problem is and deal with it. Of course, to us South Africans, long-suffering South Africans, we're saying, well, what's different to the 812 other commission of inquiries that they denied, that they just did nothing about? Well, what's different, of course, is that the ANC doesn't have the numbers. They can't put this through. So this, whether they like it or not, this is part of the reconstruction. They had to wake up in the morning and say, oh dear, we can't sweep this one under the carpet. We'll call for a commission of inquiry. And now it's dawned on them that not even that can sweep it under the carpet. So whether they like it or not, there's some reconstruction coming. The last stage, acceptance and hope, well, it depends on how optimistic you want to be and what you believe will happen within the ANC. I think acceptance is a little bit on show, the firing of a minister. You must understand, this is the first time ever that the ANC has fired a minister because of pressure. They, in the past, have steadfastly refused to fire anybody that the country has wanted them to fire. They would fire people, but not the ones that the country was saying, why is this person still in their job? So there's some acceptance. Is it hope? We'll have to see. Sadly, we've all suffered grief in our lives. We've all suffered loss. We've gone through these stages. So it happens. It's never fun. Okay? But we must remember that a political party is not a human being. It's not the same as you and I. We have to carry on our lives afterwards. But there's no saying that the political party has to carry on existing after this. And unless they actually reconstruct and work their way through it, they're not going to make it. So the real question becomes, can the ANC deal with this loss, go through these 7 stages of grief, learn from it and become this new version of itself? Well, I personally don't see the mechanisms. I don't see the people, the leadership within the party, and I don't see the will that takes the ANC from the gangster organization that it's become, the patronage network, into an efficient political party. So I don't see that happening. So I think that unless there's other stages of rebirth and regrowth that may start, I see this as being grief that doesn't necessarily lead to change. I don't see the ANC changing, right? Because reconstruction and reimagining is a very, very different process. This needs some vision. This needs commitment. This means that I'm going to do the hard work that I haven't done for years. This means that somebody gets out there and says, in the future, we are going to fix the economy. We're going to fix policing. We're going to do this. I do not see this within the party. All I see within that party at the moment is how can we protect the networks that we've got. So I'm not hopeful at all that even though they're going through the 7 stages of grief, that this leads to any stages of renewal. In actual fact, what the ANC have done is they've made renewal a joke, because it's a word that they use all the time to say we're renewing the party, but they don't really renew the party. I don't think they have a vision for South Africa. I don't think they have anything else. I think they have a vision for themselves. And that is, they themselves see themselves as the ultimate beneficiaries of South Africa. They see the tax money as theirs to squander or spend or to give to their mates. I don't see them becoming a party that can lead us into the future. I don't see them as a party that can grow the economy or help solve unemployment or even tar a road without some kind of patronage network. So let's not be confused. I have spoken about 7 stages of grief because they have suffered a loss. I am not saying that this means that they're going to renew, because I personally do not see a way that this party can renew itself. It's shown no aptitude for renewal. They're just purely a defensive organization trying to protect what they've got. But it's quite good fun to see how they're dealing with the grief of their loss in quite a predictable way. And we're almost through the end of their grief process, their grieving process. And it's going to be very interesting to see if from this grieving process, a political party can emerge. I doubt if it's going to happen. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Thank you so much for joining us on the weekly update. Remember, support Pace Car Rental and subscribe to the State of the Nation. We'll see you again next week.